Welcome to the Wellspring Digital Chat. I'm John Michael Bailey. This is where we bring marketing experts on. We extract wonderful and useful bits of information from their brains, and we share it directly with you. So today we have a good friend of Wellspring Digital and an SEO with maybe possibly more experience than Karl Hindle, our fearless leader. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think he has more experience and is smarter than Karl. It's on the record. So Tim, if you could take a moment and introduce yourself to these good people.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jim Hedger. I don't know if I have more experience than Karl. I don't know if I'm smarter than Karl or not either. But
We'll go
I
with
like
you on it.
Karl. I like Karl. He's a lot of fun.
I like to tease
Um,
Karl.
I love to tease Karl. That is just so easy, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
SEOs are always looking for the low-hanging fruit, the stuff that you can like go after fastest and affect most quickly. And teasing Karl is so easy. It's so much fun. I've been in SEO forever, for like 22 years or so, maybe
Mm.
21. If you want to know officially, ask Ross Dunn from Stepforth. He was the person who first brought me into the industry. And Ross is OG. Ross was like SEO 1.0 back there
Gotcha.
with Bruce Clay and uh, brain blank. Trying to think of some of the originals in
It
the
has been
industry.
a while.
Way back with the Planet Ocean guys.
Oh
Again,
yeah,
at the
yeah.
very beginning, in when there was like 12 unique and major search engines,
Right.
Alta Vista and Lycos, Northern Lights, etc. That's when I started.
Wow.
And
I remember it. Yep.
very shortly after that came along a search engine that nobody had heard of, had a really dumb name, Google, and but everybody told everybody else that they had to use it. And again, shortly after I started with Stepforth, which was probably 99 or 2000 ish, somewhere in there, um, Google came along and the organic search exploded.
Right.
2 years later, you know how Google has the knowledge panel that takes all the information off of your site and makes it available to everybody, so they don't got to click through to your site.
Yeah.
They did that to a company called Yahoo had bought them, and it eventually became AdWords. They did that to they stole the idea of AdWords off of Yahoo,
Okay.
and then once they introduced ads you could pay for, search exploded into
Yeah.
the industry we have today. It's been the most amazing ride.
It really has, and we're definitely going to dive deep into it in this interview. I'm looking forward to it. I feel, in some ways, I feel like you and I are old friends. I've been stalking you on Facebook
Yeah, I
and
noticed that.
listening to your podcast, Webcology, which I thoroughly enjoy. Your podcast with Dave Davies, I highly recommend it. You can get it on pretty much any podcast platform, I believe.
Yeah, I've actually stopped trying to figure out where we're distributed because we're any fine podcast distribution network near you.
There you
Bound
go.
to find it.
So it's Webcology. There'll be a link in the description below. So I have some questions for you that I feel like our audience is really going to benefit from. So let's dive in.
Please.
So on your most recent Webcology episode, you and Dave talk about whether or not Google hates SEOs, and the discussion hinted at a question that Karl wanted me to ask, which is around the idea that every year SEO dies a horrible death, and it's like Groundhog Day. It keeps waking up, refreshed and renewed and ready for the day. So, what, if anything, could kill SEO, or will it always be around in some form or another, in your opinion?
Always is an awfully long word.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, first off, you know who's even easier, even touchier and easier to tick off than Karl? Google. Google doesn't hate SEOs. They don't despise SEOs. They don't think SEOs are funny. They appreciate SEOs as part of the ecosystem, and they understand that SEOs know their tool as well or better than anybody else in the world,
Mm,
except the tiny number of Googleites who actually understand how their
right.
machines work together. And that number is shrinking rapidly as AI comes in and takes over and creates knowledge structures that even its programmers hadn't considered or hadn't thought of.
Right.
So Google appreciates SEOs, but we annoy the heck out of them. I think that's fairly established. And we annoy the heck out of them not because we're trying to game them. They don't really care about that. I mean, they do, but they don't take it as seriously as we do because they can counter our gaming quite easily.
Right.
What they dislike about SEOs is when we listen to an entire sentence and only remember 2 or 3 words of it. When we cherry pick information that they give us and come up with these like completely wild theories about how it actually doesn't work, but we convince people because Google's trying to build an ecosystem. Google has several. I like to say Google has a specific way it works, but that wouldn't be true. Google has several specific
Mm,
ways that it works as a conglomerate of machines put together, right? But for it to work optimally, the web has to be built several certain ways. There's not one way to do it. There's several ways to do it, but there are parameters, and Google wants us to stay inside those parameters.
right.
And they've spent like 20 years trying to tell us how to build websites so that it works best with Google. And we take they give us these volumes of information, and we take
Yeah.
like the best chapter um, and try to find all the shortcuts in it, and that annoys them. I can understand that. So, what could kill is does Google hate SEOs? No, Google appreciates SEOs. Look at Danny Sullivan's history with Google.
Mm,
Danny very likely can be is at least most responsible for popularizing the concept of search engine optimization and how webmasters can work with and affect Google. And they gave him a prize job as like
yeah.
communications liaison.
It's kind of like there's a presidential election and you get a awesome cabinet position.
Indeed.
It's yeah, throwing him some love. I got politics in the mind, obviously. I think everybody does, but
Well, I mean, the cool thing about Danny is he earned his
oh,
extra keep.
absolutely, yeah,
Um, and his job is a communications liaison, which is neat because he gets to he crossed that barrier as a journalist. He's now part of the machine he covered.
right,
And one day when he's allowed to talk about it, I desperately want to have a conversation with him about what it was like to cross that barrier.
sure,
So the second part of the question is what could kill SEO? Every year SEO dies. I think we're spelling the word die wrong. We're spelling it DIE and we should spell it DYE
mm,
because to die something is to change it.
mm.
If you want to get all metaphysical, I mean,
Let's
death
do
isn't
it.
necessarily the end of all things. It's just a transformation into another state of being. Um, and so is the same with SEO because things change on the web. I mean,
Right,
when I started, if you wanted to place a link, you had to hand code it, which is one of the reasons why Google, actually took links seriously at one time
right,
because they were really hard to make.
yeah,
A good 5 minutes. You only get to do 5 minutes like 12 times an hour. So that's a lot of time. But that's changed. It takes
mm,
like 30 seconds to phrase a link and have it up on the web now. So the value of that time has decreased substantially. Um, I'm trying to say things will change. We didn't have social media back
yeah,
15, 20 years ago. Now we do. That may or may not have a direct effect on Google or Bing rankings, but it certainly has a direct effect on people's web habits. And if anything is
sure,
going to change or alter the practice of SEO, it's how people access information and look for stuff on the web.
mm,
Now, as far as we can see forward, people will have to look for stuff on the web. Google is trying to and Amazon and everyone. For the purpose of the future of this interview, whenever I say Google, can you all imagine I'm also saying Amazon and the other really big houses who are messing
Yeah,
with artificial intelligence? Because
fair enough.
Google's got the lead massively, of course, but AI is going to change the game in ways that we can't even anticipate yet, but we got to anticipate that it will do that. So,
Mhm.
um, people will, until the networks can read our minds and anticipate our needs and just hand them to us with 100% accuracy, I can assure you we're all going to be looking for stuff when we need it.
Absolutely.
And as long as things got to be described, and there's as long as there are a choice of two different bars of soap you can purchase, the world will need digital marketers. And a big part of digital marketing will be the technical clarity that SEO brings to a website.
I, that's as good an answer as I've heard in the past few years, and every time I see a dismissive article about whether or not SEO is going to die. So I appreciate that.
Well, again, they're absolutely right. SEO is going to die. They're just spelling die wrong.
DYE. I love it.
Yep.
I love it. So there's a persistent conspiracy theory out there, and I
Which
believe
one?
I believe it's coming from QAnon, but I can't verify that. But the conspiracy theory is that paid search directly impacts search rankings, organic search rankings.
Yeah.
So Google is listening. This will be on YouTube. So Google is listening. So with that in mind, do you care to comment on or dispute or
Oh yeah,
agree
man.
with
Like,
this
well,
conspiracy theory?
well, first off, the origin of that conspiracy theory is wrong. It's not QAnon. It's close though. It's Spew Along, a very similar group, and this group has a nasty habit of hearing something and then just spewing it out.
Mm-hmm.
That's hence their name, Spew Along.
Love
Um,
it.
what do you mean by direct effect? If I'm a consumer looking at a search engine result page at a SERP, and I see a well-crafted ad in the corner of my eye beside a well-written description on an organic search result, and that description and the paid ad somehow mesh with each other and give me a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more confidence in that organic ad or that organic listing, then I might be more likely to click that organic listing. But outside of that, I don't see any direct effect.
Yeah, I
You
think
can,
that I think what people are trying to say is or what the conspiracy theory may be is that Google knows somehow if you're paying Google money, they'll give you more favorable rankings.
on the scale Google works, I don't even think it's possible.
Right.
Like when every once in a while you hear Google say that they made a change that affects like 1% of their search index, and you got to realize they have literally trillions of objects in their search index.
Right.
I don't even know the math to what 1% of a trillion is. I don't. I'm afraid that might be like 100 million or something. I don't know, but it's a lot. And to match up which of those objects have the added monetary value attached to them,
Right. Right.
possible. I simply don't see that. Now, I do believe that um, an SEO and a paid search expert can develop relationships that can lead to them understanding the machine better,
Mm,
but the machine itself doesn't try to assign favors based on, I mean, Google's making money hand over fist. They don't need to give that incentive, and that would destroy the veracity of the that would destroy people's faith in the truth,
sure.
the veracity, the accuracy of the organic results. And believe me, that's shaky enough half the time anyway. Why would Google do that when they don't need to?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fair.
So no, there's never been truth to that rumor, and that rumor's been around since 2003 when AdWords first popped up.
So there you have it, everyone. From an SEO who's been around longer than Google, the conspiracy theory debunked. There.
Well, as far as I know, I just have a very long memory, and I've never
Yeah.
believed that there's been a link.
So speaking of history here, I have a bit of a history with SEO, and I used to argue back in the day. I wrote a post a while back where I argued that SEO was nothing more than good UX, and that argument got a lot of blowback from some of my more technical SEO friends. So
I would think.
yeah, so I just recently wrote a bit of a mea culpa on this because I now recognize, especially working with Karl, that there is so much more to it than that. But with that admission, could you speak plainly on how UX, user experience, may or may not impact SEO?
No, but I can speak complicatedly on it.
Fair enough.
See, it's hard to speak plainly on it
Yeah.
because Google just made an announcement that changes the game, and we have yet to come up with the analogies that make it easy to explain said announcement.
Mm.
Um, as of March 2021, so 5 months down from the date of this recording, more or less, Google is going to only show results from information that's inside of its mobile index. Now, I don't think that there is a mobile index and a desktop index,
Right.
but there is one big index, and content is flagged mobile cool, not mobile cool, mobile friendly, not mobile friendly, mobile useful, not mobile useful. And if you're in the not category, you're in the lower part of the search engine result pages, probably now and most definitely after March 2021. That's a user experience thing, and that's a user experience thing about the mobile world.
Mm-hmm.
The SEO has, for most of its history, been defined, but the same way as the rest of the internet, by the desktop experience. What it's
Right.
like on a laptop, what it's like at the business, the office, the place of work that somebody has gone to, because up until the perfection of home delivery, I'd suggest, um, most SEO has been primarily business to business, with a
Mm-hmm.
good deal of work for retailers and business to consumer, Google Local and all that sort of stuff. I don't want to take away from local search at all, but SEO itself has defined itself in a business to business world, and that's changing really, really fast.
Sure.
Um, it was, I think, April 2018, maybe 2017, that Google said that like over 50% of searches conducted through Google were done via mobile devices.
Mm-hmm.
So for the techies at Google, for the engineers there, that changed everything, eh? Like that's the threshold, 50% plus one. The majority is mobile. We got to throw our energy there, and that the mobile world is not a business to business world.
Right.
It's a consumer world, consumer driven world. It's going to be a business to business world because our own use of devices is going to change rapidly. And one of the massive outcomes, changes from the pandemic, from COVID, is we're all working from home now, or a
Right.
lot of us are working from home, or if you're like me, working from the backyard. Um, which is much nicer than my than this indoor office you see me in here. Um, and so I'm using my mobile device a lot more, and goodness gracious, the technology is allowing me to use my mobile device a
Mm-hmm.
lot more. So user experience was the question. It's a long. I told you I couldn't give you a
Oh,
simple answer. I'm sorry.
fair,
Um,
fair.
User experience is one of the most important factors in SEO. Google doesn't want to give its users a crappy experience by referring them to a page that's going to like take forever to load, or crash their Chrome browser, or screw up their cell phone, or have like print in it so small that only whippersnappers can read it, and even they get confused by it. Um, that's getting old is so cool.
Yeah.
I could go
Oh
on
yeah.
for that about that forever too. Um, the only problem is you can't read whippersnapper language font anymore.
Yeah.
Anything 8 point or smaller, gone. So all the small print, and that's the mobile experience for so many people. And it's actually interesting getting to a certain age at this time of the development of technology, because when I was in my 30s, I mightn't have gotten that as a problem.
Right.
But I'm 52 now, and Karl will tell you
Yeah.
it's a problem. He'll back me up on this one. I know for sure. As you get older, these things become real.
I'm
And so,
48 and it's becoming a problem.
oh,
So
dude,
yeah.
have I got some surprises for you?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. So like user experience is really important. Google doesn't want to give people a crappy user experience. There are trillions of websites and objects in Google's index. It has lots of inventory for almost any given search query, no matter what BERT tells it you're trying to say. It still has lots of inventory to fill in. So user experience is going to be, again, especially after March 2021, critical to SEO. But to make a good user experience and to make a website work, function on the web, it takes a lot of technical know-how. There's a lot of work in the background that, well, you know what they say about the meat industry and democracy, and people in America are getting a very a very direct lesson in how the sausage is made. It's gross. You don't want to see it.
Yep.
You appreciate the sausage. Sausage is great, but you don't want to see it getting made. It's very complicated doing a website. Even a WordPress site gets complicated. And in fact, you can use the same template on the same server and do the same builds twice, and you'll still have different problems somehow.
Right.
So to say UX is the only thing in SEO wouldn't be true, although it might be true moving forward as as automation takes over the development process. Again, there's nothing static in SEO. So also, the other thing about UX being marketing language is still incredibly important. I fancy myself a content SEO as much as a technical SEO, in that I have to use persuasive language in descriptions. I have to use persuasive language in titles, or even in the choice of anchor text in links. Now, this might be descriptive language, but I have to somehow get that click. I'm trying to entice you to choose to do an action. Right. And that's language. That always comes down to use of language, or positioning of the golden object, the big red button. And that's an aesthetic that is a creative. I don't know if good creative is good user experience, but I think those are kind of separate buckets, right? So it's a team effort.
Sure. Yeah.
Last point on this, and I'm sorry I give like these huge long answers.
This is great. This is great.
Years ago, you used to be able to be a one-person band. You could have one person handling a client, and they could reasonably be expected to juggle that client and all that client's needs. Those days are so over. Right. Like anyone who's working independently as an SEO understands that you got to have friends, you got to have allies, and people you work. SEO is now like almost about building instant teams, unless you're already part of a team,
right?
And those have skilled individuals going out tackling a project like a contractor subcontractor relationship, and then moving on to your next one, and that's kind of exciting. But the key here is teamwork. It takes a lot of people to do all these different things that are necessary to craft a strong and lasting SEO campaign. A quick note, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yes, please.
This interview is being conducted on November 11th, Veterans Day in the United States, and Remembrance Day in Canada and the Commonwealth, Australia, England, New Zealand, etc. Our interview is straddling the hour of 11 a.m. and for my entire life in Canada at 11 a.m. we pause for 1 minute and just think on November 11th. and it's an important thing to me, and that's just about to happen. And
I'm honored to
John,
do it with you.
okay, if you don't mind,
Sure.
it's just a few moments just to consider what people who fought, and lest we forget.
It's important.
Thank you. Well, thank you. I appreciate the indulgence. I hope I didn't interrupt you.
No, that was powerful. We should do that in this country. That's I appreciate that.
Across Canada, 37 million people just stopped.
Yeah.
Buses stopped, subways stopped, banks mid-transaction, and it's not honored by everybody, but those who do, it doesn't matter. Your boss could be yelling at you, and you just stop.
That's hmm. Maybe I'll
It's
start a
power,
movement over here because that's
the damn powerful thing,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
I truly believe that we need warriors, and I we need every person's every society has the absolute right to defend itself, of course. But we got to remember the
Yep.
horrors that people go through, the horrors that war brings to civilians, to women, to children, and to the people who fight them. And in that memory, we have to do what our damnedest to make sure it never happens again.
Amen.
Okay, cheers.
Cheers.
So we just talked about UX and SEO.
So I wanna, if I could, I'd like to talk about Google Eat, not Google Eats, not Google will eat you, but Google Eat, which is an acronym that stands for expertise, authority, uh, or however they say it, and what's the transparency? No, trustworthiness.
Worthiness.
Man, I got all brain farty there for a second. So Google Eat. So I spoke to I don't know if you know Lily Ray.
I. Uh,
She's awesome.
she's awesome.
Yeah, she's awesome. That's all you got to say. Those who know Lily
I
Ray
have
is awesome.
danced to Lily Ray. I'll have you know.
Oh, I have too. Yeah,
Yeah, there
it's
you
kind of
go.
hard not to. Yeah, it's important. So we talked a lot about this, and she's been writing a lot about it, which I've found to be incredibly useful. But you talked about it with Dave on your show, and I wonder, if you could share with this audience your thoughts on Eat, and if it is some sort of ranking signal or not. In other words, does authority matter in terms of rankings, which you guys talked about on your show, but I wondered if you could maybe share some of that here.
Okay.
Another deep one for you.
Yeah. First of all, SEO disclaimerville.
There you go.
Anything said from this point forward is 100% educated speculation based on the educated speculation of a bunch of other people who I think know what they're talking about, including
A lot of
people from
fine print in
Google.
the bottom of the screen there.
So this includes Bill Slosky. This includes Lee Ray.
Mm-hmm.
This includes people from Bing, people from Google, a lot of commentators in our industry. Includes my friend and co-host Dave Davies. But here's the deal: none of us actually know. Even the people from Google don't entirely know. They just know what their intentions are.
Right.
Because EAT, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness, is not a direct ranking factor. It is an instruction given to Google quality raters in the guide that helps them do their job. Now, Google employs a whole bunch of people who look at websites and look at search engine results pages, and they grade the quality of the search engine result pages, and they give that feedback back to Google. And part of that grading system, part of how they have to look at websites is this website showing expertise? Is it written by, is the content produced by somebody who can demonstrate authoritativeness?
Hmm.
Are a whole bunch of other signals, links, citations, etc. Anything Google can find to verify the accuracy of information. Is this a trustworthy website? What's the
Right.
history of this website? You know that Google keeps a dossier and has since like the early 2Ks on every object in its index. Google keeps a file on everything. And those files, I mean, they're digital, so there's no actual size to them, but those files can be the size of a Mac truck for really old websites with all the action that happens around them. So all of that information, all that data Google has, does that data show that it's a trustworthy sort of website? And that's the thinking that has to inform the quality the quality raters. Now, the Google Quality Raters Guide is the closest thing we SEOs have to the inner brains of Google. This is their intentions. It doesn't tell us how the algorithm's written. It tells us what they want to see. And this is where we get EAT from: expertise, authoritativeness, and
And
trust.
it's available online, right? It's like
Absolutely.
160 some pages, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, Jennifer Slegg is probably the industry's foremost expert in what's in that guide.
Hmm.
Every time there's an update to the guide, she publishes. The SEMpost.com is Jennifer's news site,
Okay.
and it was really popular a couple of years ago. But doing a news site takes a huge amount of commitment,
Yeah.
and her career went in a slightly different direction. But every time there's a Google Quality Raters Guide update, she produces like a herking long post and posts it up at the SEM post. Must read for every SEO. So that all the stuff I just said does not in any way negate the stuff that Lily Ray's been preaching, because what she's saying is absolutely right. But people have been, I think a lot of people and a lot of commentators have been hearing her wrong, because again, SEOs are always looking for the great shortcuts that don't exist.
Yep, there you go.
Lily is explaining what Google wants to see.
Mm.
And she's explaining how you what you got to do on your website and in creating your content and in distributing your content and getting links. And she listen to what she has to say about that, because she's absolutely right. Excuse me. But don't for a second think that any of this stuff is a direct ranking. Well, I mean, it may well be a direct ranking signal. Some individual pieces may be direct ranking signals. We don't know.
Right.
What we do know is Google. When's the in this age of COVID, when's the last time a cough or a shiver sent you to Dr. Google wondering if you were sick or
Right.
not?
Right.
Now, people, oh my God, I've just learned from Google that I have impetigo. All my decisions have to change. How many times have you like had a question about taxes, and you gone to Google and you got an answer? The implications of that are kind of scary, huh?
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
And so this information has to be accurate. This is your money or your life, and Google actually has a category of website called Your Money or Your Life. And these sites need to demonstrate expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness, or they're going to end up somewhere south of Argentina on the in the search
In the
engine result
search, yeah.
pages. Um, Again, I can go into long explanations on each of the letters E, A, and T. But I think a better thing, especially because this video is probably getting to be at least an hour long by now, is read Lily Ray.
Yeah.
Listen to what she has to say. And when she's DJing and raising money for restaurants and bars and stuff that had to close down in New York because of the pandemic, shoot some money to her GoFundMe campaign.
Amen. Amen. And yes, I agree. Everything that she writes very effectively breaks down, all this this eat stuff that I think gets so misconstrued and so misquoted and misused and whatever.
Here's the thing we got to keep in mind, eh? There's like, oh God, thousands, probably tens of thousands of points that Google can use as ranking factors.
Mm.
I don't know how many it uses on average when considering any given web page or object in its index. I couldn't tell you. Lots. What I can tell you is if you do the right things in building a website and you write short, clear, concise content, and you have people, I am never going to write medical content. Never, never, never. I will edit the hell out of it, but I can't write it. I'm not a doctor. I've never been to med school. I don't know. I won't write legal content. I'm not a lawyer. I've never been to law school, and I will not do that to my clients' audiences because my clients are coming to me to give them a product that they can give their audience, their users, whatever, that is going to benefit everybody, including them, in getting better search rankings.
Exactly.
So I'm going to get somebody who knows, because quick self-indulgent antidote from sure. the origins of the web. It's hard to take what we do seriously until you actually realize the implications of it. Because we work in our own little home offices, or we used to go to offices where we'd gather with like 5, 10 to 15 other individuals who all shared our little regional local concerns and all cheered for the same sports teams and stuff.
Right.
So I used to go to an office very similar to this back in the early 2Ks with Ross Dunn and stuff forth, and we were some of the first people putting out daily columns on search. There wasn't organized search media back then as there is now. Mostly it was just individual blogs and websites and newsletters and stuff. And Lauren Baker got Search Engine Journal together. Danny Sullivan got the original Search Engine Watch together. And, slowly media congealed. But we were putting out like an article a day, newsletter style. And one day I saw one of the things I'd written translated into the Czech language online. And that blew my mind. This is like probably 2002, 2003 or something. And just the implications of what we were doing became very, very real then. Like, it occurred to me that people were betting their children's scholarship money or their children's college funds on their businesses 10 years before their kids would go to college. And what we were writing was directly affecting whether that kid was going to go to college or not. That's important.
Yeah.
Google has to think like that.
Yep.
SEOs have to think like that. We're building an information ecosystem. And I know that sounds dramatic, but it's important. And that's what Google's trying to impose by demanding authoritativeness and expertise in web content.
That's great. That was a brilliant way to button that up. So I appreciate that, definitely. So speaking of technical and Google and the size of it and the scope of it and all the crazy things that go in with it, let's talk schema.
Yay. Schema is so cool.
So we mentioned schema to clients and we get the sideways look, the kind of tilt their head like, huh, what are you talking about? And schema can even seem to confound some SEOs, but I wondered if maybe for some of our audience, you could, in lay terms, explain what schema is and then talk maybe about its role, its importance in SEO.
Okay. Well, first I can tell you what it's not. Okay. When you're sitting talking to your client, put yourself in your client's role for
sure,
in your client's chair for a second. Okay, they're running a business. They got so much stuff they're concerned about. Their bankers screaming at them, and they got to pay their mortgage. COVID is closing it around them, and all this stuff. Right? They don't know they don't know jack about what's happening on their website, no matter what they tell you. And maybe they do. But for the most
It's
part,
rare.
that's not their expertise. That's why
Right.
they're coming to you. You're their expert. And so you're sitting there, you're throwing out all these like very smart industry buzzwords, and you say the word schema, and they hear schmegma.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you think schmegma is. I don't even know if schmegma is a real thing, but it's gross. I can tell you
Yeah.
that much. And that's what they hear. Like
Yeah.
seriously, that because you just toss out all these all this jargon and stuff that they've heard before, so they can comfortably turn their head off because you're just saying something that they've already heard, and suddenly you just said schmegma. Like you can imagine, like conversation stops, the dust settles, and everyone is looking to see what the hell is this? Do I have it on my arm? Um, so you have to say markup language after schema markup language. You have to make the client appreciate that this is something that's new and kind of funny sounding. You yourself see that it sounds really funny, and then you tell them it's as effective as it is funny. Schema markup language is a way of informing Google on the fly about stuff it's looking at. Think of, again, I've said this several times, and I apologize for being redundant. I've said this several times in the interview. There are trillions of objects in Google's index. Google is Google's trying to keep up with expectations of its users, and all of us expect answers now.
Yeah.
We don't expect answers 15 minutes from now. So we don't expect answers tomorrow. I'm not looking for stuff tomorrow. I'm looking for it now. Google, on the other hand, if you post a sports score that the game just ended like 5 minutes ago, Google has to go retrieve that, get the information, phrase it, and put it up online. That could take 3 or 4 minutes. That could take an hour. In the olden days, when it actually had to spider every individual website, extract its content, and then figure out what that content meant against all the queries coming in, that could take weeks.
Right.
Now it takes seconds. To do that, Google needs to be informed digitally. Everything's digital. Google needs to be informed
in the code.
In code, yeah, immediately. Yeah. Not in such a way that it renders the site and then extracts the information. The information has to be fed to it.
Right.
This is why we have XML sitemaps, which John Mueller came out yesterday and said XML. And you know what? Let's start the whole thing about schema with XML sitemaps. This might make it easier.
Sure.
XML is not schema, but Mueller said yesterday that an XML sitemap is the basic indicator of a well-made site. So you don't got an XML sitemap, or say you're using some e-commerce content management system that pumps out a PHP version. That's an equivalent. That'll work. But if you don't have like a sitemap that is feeding information to Google rather than Google having to come and retrieve it,
right?
Google doesn't think you have a basically sound site.
Which was amazing to see. I was actually surprised by that he basically just said, you know, we're judging you based on this little piece.
Yep.
Which is such a simple little piece to create, but yeah.
Well, but here's, I mean, cool thing. Most content management systems just do it now.
Yeah.
In fact, I think that's one of the reasons people were using Yoast 3 or 4 years ago, was because it was one of the best XML sitemap creators. Right. So schema is the markup language that you can put around pretty much describing any object on your website. Now, one of the problems with the tech world is we use words interoperably. Object and entity can mean the same thing.
Right.
Although I think actually I should use the word entity more than the word object, because entity describes more things than objects. Entities can also be ideas. Schema is used to describe every entity on your website, and please interpret the word entity as liberally as you possibly can. An entity can be, again, a phrase that matches up with a phrase on another page.
Mm-hmm.
It's a concept. It could be an image, it could be a block of text, it could be a little passage. Um, it's a, I hate the word object, because object makes you think of, like, something physical. This is an object.
Right.
Schema is the data language used to describe all those entities, and you can apply it to virtually anything. Go to schema.org, and one of the first things that will confuse the living heck out of you is the almost unending number of classes you can apply schema to.
Right.
Class just sort of means what would how would they say that in botany? A genome,
Okay.
genus, a species.
Species.
Yeah, that's what class means. So a class applies to, like, time, location,
I mean, it could be anything.
product,
Yeah.
and then all the things that you describe in a product. It could be anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there is a schema markup code very likely to correspond with that.
Yep.
Schema.org. Go to that. If you've never been there before, if you're totally fresh to schema, go to schema.org. Don't get intimidated. Read it 5 or 6 times. Go type schema, Slosky into Google and see what Bill's had to say about patents that involve schema. Give it a couple of days and just keep plugging at it, and a light bulb will go off in your head, and you will become a master SEO. You'll go, oh my God, I get it. Oh, I'm going to use this all the time. And your clients will think you're a genius, because you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I think schema to me, and this is going to be a horrible oversimplification, but schema to me seems like it's like what a rocket ship is to, say, a Model T Ford.
Sure.
They're both modes of transportation, but very different. Well, saying schema is the rocket ship, and say, like, meta tags maybe is the Model
T.
Yeah.
Well, if I could even add to that,
sure.
Schema is now the flatbed truck and the engine and the thing that you're sitting in that you're towing the Model T on to get to the next show.
That's perfect. Perfect. Well, Jim, I absolutely appreciate you being on here, and there's so much in here that I know some people watching this are going to get a lot out of this. I will put links to your podcast, because there's great information in there from you and Dave. So again, I really appreciate your time. This has been great.
Can I just quickly throw in a plug for the podcast? Because in doing so, I want to also throw in a plug for Webmaster Radio itself.
Sure. Yes.
Okay. You've mentioned the podcast, Webcology. Thank you, by the way.
Sure.
It's, of all the stuff that I do, Webcology is the one that I like the most. I appreciate.
It's great.
And I think it's a contribution. So that's important, because I think we all need to contribute. Like this Wellspring Digital series is a contribution. Thank you for doing this. You're bringing information,
yes,
and making it a better industry. Webmaster Radio has been on the air for 17 years now. Darren Babin and Brandy Shapiro Babin started Webmaster Radio, and it's a gift to the SEO community, to the digital marketing community, and it's a labor of love. They don't make very much money at it. In fact, I think they're supporting it rather than it's supporting them.
Sure.
But Webmaster Radio has several long-standing podcasts. I mean, our podcast is 16 years old. Webmaster Radio has several podcasts of similar length. SEO Rockstars, PPC Rockstars, marketing tips, just tons of great shows. I urge people in this audience, please go check out Webmaster Radio. SEO 101 with Ross John and John
Hmm.
Carecut, two other ancient SEOs. Check out the content there. It's very much worth the listen. Webmasterradio.fm, WMR.fm, or again, find their shows at any fine podcasting distribution service. We've been doing it for years.
Great.
And we strive to bring good information to the digital marketing community.
That is one thing I love about SEOs is that you all are just a wealth of useful, great information that, all you need to do is search for it and it's there. So thank you for all you do. Thanks to everyone, all the rest of you SEOs. I really do love you, I swear. So thank you so much, Jim, for being here, and stay safe up there in Canada. And we'll try to do the same down here.
You too. Be well and stay safe everyone out there.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.